I spent years obsessed with Japan. I even lived there for 6 months, but now I live in Chongqing, China, and honestly, this feels like home more than Japan ever did. So, just like a lot of you probably watching this, my first, I would say, gateway or exposure to Japanese culture was through anime or video games. But where I think things really took a turn for me and when I really became obsessed with Japanese culture was around 2009 when I played the video game called The World Ends With You, which took place in Shibuya, Tokyo. And this game really exposed me to what you could consider modern, youthful Tokyo culture. And it was just like this whole brand new world to me, and I just became obsessed for years. And really, a lot of it stemmed from this video game, which is kind of funny to say now, but really, that's the truth. So I grew up in a family where we didn't really travel all that much, with the exception of 1 or 2 trips to the States when I was a teenager. So because of that, in high school, I made it my goal, a very passionate, very strong, desired goal, to travel to Japan as my first real big trip. So finally, in the year of 2017, I had been working for about 3 years at this point. So I had saved up a little bit of money, and finally I was able to travel to Japan for the first time. And when I traveled there, I totally fell in love. To the point where I actually went back to school to get my bachelor's degree so that I could legally work in Japan so that I could move there. So now fast forward to March 2020, and I finally moved to Japan. Not only traveled there, but I actually moved to Japan. I landed a job there as an art director, which was an absolute dream at the time, especially considering that a lot of foreigners get jobs there as English teachers. So achieving this, it was really like, it felt like a life-changing thing for me at the time. So I lived in Japan for about 6 months in 2020. And of course, as all of you know, 2020 was during the pandemic. For personal reasons, I had moved back to Toronto. I believe it was at the end of August 2020. So I only had roughly around 6 months in Japan, but it was enough to gauge what it is like to properly live in Japan. So the plan wasn't always to stay in Toronto. Once I returned to Toronto in August 2020, it was kind of just a step back. And I think for me, the plan was still to return back to Japan once I have resolved those personal issues that I had. But, because of the pandemic, it was kind of just like this sitting situation of just like, when are the borders going to open? I don't know. So around 2022, when Japan opened up its borders again for work visas, and then later in the year for tourist visas, that would have been, I guess, a opportunity to return. But I was actually hesitant to return around that time. So at this time in 2022, my freelance career was pretty much doing better than ever. I thought, maybe I can stay in Toronto for a little bit more, save up some money, and then eventually work my way back to moving to Japan with a substantial amount of savings. But honestly, I was also questioning whether or not it was truly Japan that I wanted to move back to, or if it was simply just the experience of living abroad. I had other options. I had other cultures I've explored and I was interested in, such as South Korea. But at the time, to be honest, I didn't have mainland China on my radar at all. Because in all honesty, it didn't really have the best reputation in the West. But it was also around this time where things took a really big turn and change for me. So in 2022, I met my now partner and girlfriend, Lulu, which a lot of you know. And she is from Chongqing, China, which you can see right behind me here. And she showed me a side, or let's say a variety of sides of China that I honestly just did not know existed. Up until meeting Lulu, I was honestly ignorant, for the lack of a better term, or to be honest, maybe that's the best term. I was ignorant, and she really opened up this world that I just did not know existed. I had no idea how culturally diverse China was. She'd tell me interesting stories about China. We'd watch Chinese travel videos together on YouTube. She introduced me to real Sichuan food for the first time. I also met her friends from mainland China, and they were super nice and super welcoming. It was also around this time when I started to listen to Chinese music for the first time. I really like metal music, and I discovered a whole world of metal music I didn't even know existed. and just overall started to really research, Chinese culture, Chinese art, Chinese history, all of the above. And truly, I owe that to Lulu for just opening up the floodgates for me and challenging me on my ignorance. So I actually want to rewind back to 2017 for a moment. 2017 is actually the first time that I went to this mall called Pacific Mall. It's in a city right next to Toronto called Markham, and it's a Chinese mall. And this was the first time where I was like, okay, there's like this hidden world that I don't really know about that's different from this Americanized Chinese food that I grew up with. It was this deeper Chinese world that I was exposed to. It's the first time I tried Xi'an Rojamo, for an example, or Xi'an cold noodles. And something there really clicked with me. It really vibed with me. And it was probably the first time I actually questioned my obsession with Japanese culture and whether or not, Japan is the place that I actually want to move to. But I still brushed that off and I ended up moving to Japan regardless in 2020. But now let's forward back to 2022. Lulu and I were sitting on my couch and we're watching travel videos. And then I saw this one video suggested to me. It was a city walk in Chongqing. And Lulu pointed this out as her home city, which she had mentioned before. And so I click on this. And this was the moment where I was like, holy shit. I could not believe what I was seeing. This massive, colorful and vibrant modern cityscape, absolute massive city. And I was like, holy crap, we've been lied to our whole entire lives type of moment. I had no idea a city like this existed outside of Tokyo, Shanghai, or Beijing. And when I was told that there are many other cities like this in China, I was like, I don't know anything. I absolutely do not know anything. It was honestly this complete shedding of ignorance. And it was truly the pivotal moment. I can still remember it to this day where I truly felt like, wow, the world is much bigger than I thought it was. And it was from here where I was really challenged on, things or conceptions that I had in the past. For an example, like, there's certain things that I thought were originally Japanese, and Lulu would challenge me and show me, in fact, no, these things are actually from China. Example is like, like matcha or mochi, or even the kimono, things like that. Over the years, she just continuously challenged me on these things. And I said this earlier, but she really opened up the floodgates for me on this whole entire new world. I feel like I can truly owe it to Lulu for abolishing my ignorance. And I just really hope that other people can have these types of holy shit moments like I had, and just a total humiliated moment of I'm wrong. And from this point onwards, it was really continuous moments like this that made me realize that my connection that I'm building with China is much deeper than what I had with Japan, and that the relationship I had with Japan was actually much more surface level than I had originally thought. My obsession with Japan was honestly based more on novelty, on it being different, you could say. But my connection with China was feeling much deeper. It was feeling more authentic. And in a sense, it felt like it was being more true to myself. Because of the way that I just vibed with it. It's almost hard to put into words, but that's really how I felt and how I still feel. And because of all this, Japan was never going to be home like the way I thought it was going to be growing up. I really feel like over time, I just really got along with Chinese people more. I really got this friendly vibe from them, these deeper connections with them that I was honestly lacking from the short amount of time that I lived in Japan. To be honest, 6 months isn't actually all that short. That's still half a year. And during that time, I had a very hard time making connections with people. And some might say it's because of the language barrier, but living in China with the language barrier, I'm embarrassed to say my Chinese still isn't that great. But even with the language barrier here, I still have a much easier time of making legitimate friends, not just surface level friendships. And what I'm about to say might not be the experience for everybody, but from my own experience, when I tried to make friends in Japan, it really felt, as I said, surface level. It felt like a lot of the times people just wanted to have a foreign friend, or somebody to be acquainted with that they can practice English with. But in China, the friendships that I'm making, they just feel much more deeper and authentic. And this is still despite the language barrier, which I'm working on. I also feel like I was in denial of how much I liked Chinese food over Japanese food over the years. And this was even going all the way back, to 2017 when I first went to Pacific Mall. I would always claim that Japanese food was my favorite food. But I think deep down, I felt like I always preferred the flavor of Chinese food. And then when Lulu introduced me to the variety of food that exists within China, not just Sichuan food, but food all around the country, I was just completely blown away. And I was like, I can't lie to myself anymore. Chinese food is my absolute favorite. There's just so much flavor packed in all of these different cuisines, so much variety. This is not just with food, but in general, where Japan is minimalist, I find China can be quite maximalist, which in a lot of ways, I just vibe with that so much more. I also find myself being much more interested in Chinese history, Chinese legends, Chinese spiritualism, art, a lot more than I did when I had my obsession with Japan. I feel like with China, I really want to explore these things a little bit more, versus with Japan, I just had more of, I guess, a fun time enjoying the novelty of everything, but I didn't care as much to go deep into these other things such as history and spiritualism and so on. So long story short, I guess you could just say my relationship with China just feels much more mature. It's less based off of obsession and fantasy and novelty, and just a much more deeper and mature relationship. So finally, in 2024, when I decided to quit my career and make the decision to move back abroad, it was China that was my choice and not Japan. Before moving to China in 2024, I traveled for about 1 month in April of 2024. A lot of you might have seen the videos from that here on my YouTube channel. But it was really that trip that solidified that decision for me. Japan will always have a special place in my heart. It's still a place that I love to visit. I went there twice last year. But China is really the place where I want to build my life. As an introvert, Japan allowed me to have a lot of fun, very comfortably, but China pushes my boundaries, and to be honest, that's exactly what I need in my early 30s. So yeah, this is home now. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.